Sexland trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down. Toro slammed it home. Garland upstairs. Oh! Sexton inside. A thunderous dunk. And Allen blocked the shot at the rim.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Cleveland Cavaliers pass and excel in their first major test of this season, going 3-2 on their road trip with an exclamation mark at the end as they hang on for a big win over the Charlotte Hornets. Before we get into all of that, I got to remind you that this support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. And joining me now on Zoom is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. We had a we had a really fun game against Charlotte last night, and I feel like it kind of came back to normal. You know, like that felt a lot more like the Cavs team we've seen all season. Than obviously the Phoenix game when they just didn't have their legs under them and kind of just got demoralized a bit. It was kind of fun to see the team kind of get back to being able to take a team's big haymakers and still keep them at bay, because I feel like there were several times in that game where Charlotte really came avalanched with points, and the Cavs survived. Among the old Larry Bird thing, he never lost a game. He only ran out of time. I think the Hornets would probably tell you they ran out of time on that one, but the Cavs, held on, and it was a really encouraging game to me. Again, Sexland's not shooting well. The Cavs aren't shooting well. These things that we thought needed to happen for this team to be competitive with good teams like the Hornets, who are, I think, much better than either of us thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I would say so.
They're not getting exactly what you would hope they would get, and they're still winning, which is kind of hard for me to process still.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really, really encouraging sign. And I would still say I'm not ready to move off my preseason prediction that the Cavs can be better than the Hornets this season, because I think the Hornets are getting pretty near their high-end outcomes for a lot of their players. So, they are really clicking on all gears to open this season. There's not as many new pieces that they're trying to integrate this year. Guys like Bouknight and all that aren't really playing the way that I anticipated, and I expect a learning curve there. But, I mean, the Cavs don't seem to be clicking on all cylinders yet, and they're still right there, right? You look at the record early in the season, they're 2-1 against the Eastern Conference. Only loss coming against Charlotte without Darius Garland. And as you mentioned at the top, the guards still aren't shooting well yet. Lauri Markkanen, I thought he had a better weekend, basically. It was a long weekend for me, so I'm counting both the Lakers game and this Hornets game. But, he's starting to click offensively, which is great because Lauri Markkanen is someone that I think has really, really impressed with his play early on in this season.
Which remains funny because the shot still is not falling.
Right. And the criticism of Lauri Markkanen prior to this season was, okay, yeah, he can hit some shots. Yes, he can average 20 for a month or two, but he's not really doing the other things, right? He's not contributing on the defensive end, kind of soft with his play. Those were the common criticisms that you've heard. So the fact that he's come out early in the season playing out of position and making an impact in ways that were unexpected or that weren't traditionally attributed to him, I think it's a really, really good sign. And you look at the Cavs up and down the lineup, there's a lot of guys playing in new roles, new systems. And while they're not necessarily clicking offensively, I feel like they are playing better team basketball and better basketball players. And I think the Cavs guards are a prime example of that. Yeah, the shots aren't necessarily falling so far this season, but they're contributing in other ways, and they're playing a style that's a little more conducive to team success.
I've boiled this Cavs team down and kind of what I wanted from them into kind of one basic phrase for a while, and I mentioned it to Coach Sidney Lowe when we talked before the season, talked about it since. All I want is for this team to be more than the sum of their parts, and right now I feel like they are, the sum of their parts it's a wonky set of parts, And with some of those players not playing the way that you think they would play, and yet they're still competitive. And there's some verve there. There's some, whether it's defensive problem solving or the talent or the wonkiness kind of playing in their favor in terms of the size, whatever it is, if you add up, all the efficiency numbers offensively for this team, the kind of the portfolio of their point guard, shooting guard, and small forward, historically defensively, the sum of those parts is not a team that goes 4-4 right now.
Yeah.
Given the way that they're performing on the offensive end of the ball, and yet here we are going with a terribly tough schedule, with things not really going their way. And
with a team that has struggled on the road, like last season, their offensive rating was basically 10 points worse when they were on the road, and that's typical of young teams in general, right? That it's tougher to play on the road. Your role players traditionally don't hit the same shots, and last season was without crowds. This season you do have crowds, you do have that kind of home court advantage in a more traditional sense, and whereas last year is probably more to do with the travel and the realities that we don't often talk about when it comes to NBA teams. But I can't think of just given the context and given the situation, I can't think of a more encouraging start being even possible for this team.
Yeah, I mean, it cannot be said enough that this team has played 2 out of their 8 games at home so far, and those 2 games were on a back-to-back.
Yeah, they've been home for basically 3 days.
Yeah,
all season.
and one of those days was a travel day from Memphis.
Right.
Actually, I'm no beat writer. I don't know if they flew back that night.
Well, I was going to say, if you're counting that, then we can even count today. Let's not get bogged down in technicalities.
Yeah. So, the fact that what we're seeing, it's just so encouraging. I mean, Laurie has not hit a shot the whole way, and obviously there's some positive regression coming on the bench, probably with Jetty Osman, who is setting the net on fire right now. But you just see the people who you really counting on not doing a particularly good job shooting the ball. And it's not and I don't think that they are holding other teams. I don't think other teams are having terrible luck against them. Nope. Their league
looked
average.
At the numbers today. The opposition is shooting basically at league average for threes, which it's worth noting. League average is down. It's 34.2%.
That's so low.
It's so damn low. Then the Cavs opponents are currently shooting 33.8% on threes against them. So
and it's not your your older brother or sister's Cavs this year. They're mostly contesting at a pretty decent rate. I don't think that, I always, joke about some of those post LeBron part 1 and 2 Cavs teams where, Fred and AC or now John and AC would be like, oh man, they just can't miss. I'm like, yeah, well, they're getting a series of wide open threes. NBA players hit
jumpers,
those
essentially, right?
Yeah, and I don't really think that's been the case in this one, whereas the Cavs are missing a lot of warm-up jumpers.
Yeah, and also when the Cavs opponents are getting those open looks, they normally have to work pretty hard. They're coming later in the shot clock. Charlotte hit a lot of really difficult shots down the stretch, and you mentioned the Larry Bird saying never lost a game, just ran out of time. With the way they were hitting shots and the way every single call was going their way, you would expect that to even out at some point. It was a wild game. I think the Cavs have responded well to adversity this season. It's a little harder to do that when you are at a talent deficit, which they were against the Lakers as well as the Phoenix Suns. But even in that game, they responded, or against the Lakers, they responded well. Suns was just, that's a write-off. But throughout this season, teams have made runs against them on the road, and the Cavs have found a way to punch back, to respond well. And that is a really, really encouraging sign. And one of the guys that I think kind of embodies that toughness is Ricky Rubio, because I didn't think he had a particularly good game offensively against Charlotte here. He missed a lot of shots. He had a couple pick 6 type turnovers. He had 2, I believe, in the second quarter, and those were the first transition buckets that the Cavs gave up all night. There was a third that was probably a foul. It was attributed as a missed shot rather than a turnover, but that led to an and one on the other end. But even with all of that, even with him probably having his most offensive struggles that we've seen in a regular season game with the Cavs, he was still a massive positive. And I think the benefit of having a veteran like Ricky Rubio, it can't be overstated, because it allows you early in this season to work through some struggles as Garland and Sexton adjust to a new system. Everybody's trying to learn how to play in an offense that involves more motion, less leveraging of their individual talents that we saw in the past. And the fact that you have a steadying presence in Rubio that allows you to go through those growing pains and not panic when things aren't going well, I think that's really, really valuable, because I've said this before. I'll say it on almost every single podcast. I think it's going to pay off long-term dividends if they continue to invest in this ball movement, learning how to play off ball. And I think you're just going to see more and more growth as the season progresses.
Ricky has been so interesting because I think a lot of people, and maybe me to some extent as well, kind of thought of him as this like really steady, like almost like Jose Calderon type of like caretaker, like, and he's not a caretaker. He is a super aggressive and makes a lot of really kind of risky decisions, but he keeps that verve going that I talked about. It's funny. I saw our friend the pod Jason Maples tweet that Ricky Rubio would be great for the Boston Celtics, and I DM'd him. I said, you can take Ricky from my cold dead hands. Like
I responded saying I don't think, traditionally speaking, playoff teams trade veterans to lotto teams.
No, you don't. And I just it's funny. I just couldn't be less interested in trading him. And I think I said this, I think, on the last pod, or maybe it was the one before that. We're going so many times a week now, it's hard to keep my head straight. But I do think when I feel like Cavs fans were the only ones who, when they saw that trade happen, didn't just go, oh, well, there's someone for them to flip at the deadline.
Yeah.
We were all like, oh, thank God.
An adult in a room that addresses their biggest need. And it was funny because that Maples tweet actually inspired a question that I had in Discord, which was, if Boston called you up right now and offered Marcus Smart for Ricky Rubio, objectively speaking, I think Smart is a better player, but when you look at what the Cavs actually need, if they could work out an extension with Rubio, who expressed on media day, hey, you know what, I'm tired of changing teams, I'm tired of moving around. It's been frustrating for him because everywhere he's gone, his teammates have loved him. He is an elite teammate, but he's just, because he's so valuable, he gets moved around a fair bit. And I was sitting there and I was thinking about that hypothetical. Maples had kind of inspired it. And I was like, what Ricky brings to the table, that playmaking, that extra juice, the presence that he has, that the positivity of Ricky Rubio, the flair that he has. I don't think I would move on from him. Unless you get your socks completely blown off and someone comes out with a massive offer, and he's a part of it, I think I'd want to keep Ricky around. It's good vibes, man. And
it's good vibes.
We have been missing out on good vibes for a while now.
But I'll say this, and no disrespect to the guy, but JaVale brought good vibes. But there's a difference between good vibes in the locker room and good vibes on the court. And obviously I thought JaVale was perfectly serviceable for this team, and I was sad to see him go.
Yeah,
but
that was a fun stretch of Cavs history right there.
But with that said, Ricky is raising the floor of this team, and is making, on games where Darius has a bad game, he can go plus 23 while shooting 1 of 7 from the field, and that kind of stability and production is hard to find. It as we noted, Taurean Prince, he could be a really capable, spacer and shooter for this team, and it still wouldn't add up to all the stuff that Ricky's adding, which is so funny. It's it just goes to show how hard it is to kind of, put this game into numbers and put this game into archetypes. If you were looking at this team and you said, well, you could probably get, Raul Neto or someone like that. And there are a lot of serviceable backup point guards. There weren't a lot of serviceable backup wings. So like, when people were very upset that they traded Prince, I did not get it. I thought they were wrong, but I did not get it because it's like you look at what the Cavs came into camp with at the wing, and I think we all were like, uh-oh. And frankly, we're all still kind of like, uh-oh.
Yeah, we would like a wing, but
we would like more wings. But like the fact of the matter is, Taurean Prince couldn't have done this for this team.
Right. And I think we always look at like kind of what the ideal archetypes are, right? Like we'll look at whatever the best team in the league is and say, okay, that's the way you have to build. And obviously a wing would be a massive, massive benefit for this team. But at the end of the day, like talent is the most important thing. I understand that the wing is the most important position in today's NBA, but getting pieces that work together, getting as much talent as you can on the floor and finding ways to maximize that talent, even if it is unconventional, is the most important way to play. Look at Boston. Boston has two of the best young wings in the NBA, and they're not winning because they don't have someone that sets the table for them. Their play in the interior is not that great. The Cavs are the complete inverse of that, where you have good guards, good big men, and you're winning games. And I'm not necessarily saying, okay, this combination of players is more valuable than Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. It's talking about actually maximizing the talent that you do have and making some compromises. Yeah, you gave up a good 3-and-D player in Taurean Prince, but you brought in a really good veteran that helps on and off the court and addressed one of the biggest needs, which was how bad the backup point guard play was last season. Like every time Garland would go to the bench, everything would fall apart. It made things more difficult for Sexton. And you're looking at it now, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Carter, but it does seem like the guards are getting more comfortable playing with Rubio, right? Like I think Darius is being a little more assertive lately, and Sexton seems to be settling into his role too. Like obviously there is still going to be growing pains with that, and I'm looking forward to playing some easier competition at some point to see how these guys do.
Yeah, see you in a month and a half.
I don't know, man. Portland kind of sucks right now.
Yeah, well, we should cherish that if that does come to pass, because my word, it is challenging right now.
Well, you talk about positive regression. Currently, some fun stats for you. Portland is currently giving up 19.6 wide open threes a game with a defender over 6 feet. They're also giving 15.7 open threes a game. That is a really, really nice that's a nice blend of deficiencies for a team that is finally coming home and might be getting some home cooking. I mean, Damian Lillard is not playing well at all. Cavs currently are only shooting 28.7% on catch and shoot looks from three, which is just absolutely crazy low. But as much as Portland might be looking at this as a get right game, man, I'm looking at this, Cavs finally getting home. This is a really, really good opportunity for them to go above 500 9 games into the season and kind of, get some good vibes going before they head on the road to face a tough test in both Toronto and New York.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that this is the kind of game where this is the kind of spot where you want to catch Portland. They're still trying to implement Chauncey's new kind of come up to the level. They aren't playing that conservative Terry Stotts defense anymore, where they would drop back with their bigs. And you know what? Turns out bad defensive personnel is still bad defensive personnel, because coming up to the level, I don't think is really that much better. And one of the reasons that a lot of teams like to play that drop coverage is if you give up a lot of wide open catch and shoot threes. If you come up to the level and get caught, and the Cavs have one of the better short role players in the league when their point guards get blitzed in Evan Mobley already. I think he already can be trusted to make really elite decisions. So as long as people like Laurie are spacing properly and Jarrett is, lurking around that dunker spot for that high-low action, which is, man, their interior passing is just like better and better and better. I mean, freaking Jared Allen threw an alley-oop to Evan Mobley yesterday. Like, what on earth?
We got another Mobley to Laurie 2-man play, which is just so much fun.
Do people understand that 7-footers don't throw alley-oops except Nikola Jokic?
I don't
like
think
they're literally the only one. Like,
is.
I guarantee you, outside of the Cavs, there are probably less than 10 alley-oops thrown by 7-footers this year.
Yeah,
and the Cavs probably have 8 to 10 by now. It's ridiculous, the skill level they have among these
and
bigs.
they're still learning how to play with each other, right? Like
totally.
They're once again they're adapting to a new system. They're learning how to implement new pieces. They're learning how to kind of get comfortable with each other in really adverse situations. So that's exciting. And speaking of getting comfortable with one another, Carter, if you had to guess what Garland's usage rate was in the preseason when he was playing with Rubio, and even let's lump in his first 2 games of this season, how low do you think that would be?
I'm really bad at usage rates. I never know what the baseline is.
Okay, that's fair.
So I'm not going to play this game very well, but I'll try my best. I think with Rubio, it had to be super low, like 15 tops.
Yeah, it was 15.7
there
in
we
the
go.
preseason.
There we go.
In the preseason. And then in the regular season, the Grizzlies game, as well as his first game back against Denver, it was below that. It was sub 15%. And since that point, Darius Garland actually has a higher usage rate with Rubio on than off. With Rubio on in the last 4 games, he has a 26.4 usage rate, and he is averaging per 36, 22 points and 6 assists. With Rubio off the floor, that drops to 22.9 for usage rate, and he's averaging 14 points and 8 assists per 36 minutes. So one of the things that I've noticed with Garland is you still can kind of get a sense of when he's looking to score and when he's looking to pass. He hasn't really blended those two together. And I think when you look at the difference in those per 36 numbers with Rubio on and off, you're now starting to see him get a little more comfortable with Rubio, become a little more assertive. He's still getting those assists. But when Rubio's off the floor, the assists only drop 2 per 36 minutes, but the points go way down. And I think that is him missing opportunities to be assertive, to be that scorer, and kind of forgetting some of the lessons that we learned later in last season, where he was being more assertive offensively and was creating opportunities for both himself and others. Now, who knows? Maybe some of that is related to the fact that he's not shooting well from the floor. He's not hitting his threes, so that can always kind of have
down
an
to
impact
43
on your willingness to take.
Down to 43 and 31.
Yeah.
Which are not the splits you want to see.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done. I mean, you can probably relate when you play basketball. Like, yeah, you will pass up some good looks.
I'm sorry,
if you're not shooting well.
43 and 30. Sorry, yeah. I was looking at his road game splits.
I will forgive you in time. Don't you worry.
Thanks, buddy.
But yeah, and I think that was the case for Sexland too. Like late against Charlotte, both of them had passed up open 3 opportunities late in the game. And it's easy to forget, okay, they're at the end of a long road trip. But I do think that the bottom line is these guys need to take those open threes whenever they're available. I think they've done actually a better job of hunting for threes. We've seen Sexton do some pull-ups. Darius will, earlier in games, will kind of create space and hunt the odd 3 or 2. But they need to stick with it. They need to take advantage of every single open opportunity, because when you do pass up those open looks and you're driving into the paint, you're letting the defense off the hook. They're not going to close out as hard because you're not as much of a threat to shoot. And you very, very rarely in those instances get a wide open look when you pass up a wide open look. It's just, there's usually not enough time in a shot clock for you to do that against an NBA defense.
In general, and this has always been the problem with these Cavs is early in the shot clock, they are the kings of, great being the enemy of good.
Mm-hmm.
Like the play where Darius passed up the wide open 3 and then kicks to Colin at the top, and then he passed up the wide open 3, and then I think they ended with a shot clock violation on that possession against Charlotte. Like that's a backbreaker,
Yep.
Those kind of plays are really, really challenging, and especially with small guards, you got to take the advantages when you have them.
Mm-hmm. And late in games, often when it's late in games, you're tired, you revert to your natural habits, right? And at the end of the day, Garland is most comfortable. His natural tendency is to get into the lane and create for others. Sexton's is to drive. He's best as a slasher, right? So it's not necessarily a criticism. It's just acknowledging an area for growth. And when I tweeted last night, I think I was unclear, because I said the easiest way for this team to raise their ceiling is for Garland and Sexton to shoot more. And it's not necessarily about field goal attempts per game. I was speaking specifically taking more 3-pointers, making the most of those opportunities, because you saw when Charlotte got back in that game, it was LaMelo and Terry Rozier being willing to take those threes, forcing the defense to come out, because when you are taking all of those open threes and you are a constant threat to pull up from there, guys are going to come out a little more aggressively. It's going to generate opportunities for other people, generates long rebounds. The Cavs have some length there. I just think it's the obvious next step. I know it sounds like a broken record, but at the same time, this is the best way for this team to raise their ceiling offensively.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, really just making them will go a long way. I mean, yeah, I don't think the volume is yet where it needs to be. I'm not sure where they rank in the league right now. I'm pulling that up, but it is Colin, it is, and it's Darius. And I think both of them are trying to deal with the fact that they're not going in. So, they're 27th in the league still in volume. Yeah. They're not a distant 30th, which they were for stretches of last season. Right. But they're still 27th. And I think a lot of that does come from Darius. Darius should be shooting 8 or 9 a game. He's shooting 6. Colin should be shooting 6 or 7 a game. He's shooting 4.
Yep.
There you go.
And it's really easy for us to sit at home and say, hey, I know you guys I know you guys are missing your threes right now, but you just keep taking them, process over results. And you know what? I think in general,
can I really quickly say this? If Darius and Colin combine for 4 more 3-point attempts a game, they will jump from 27th to 18th in the league in 3-point rate. Yeah, that's not that many.
Really isn't. Really is not.
And to some extent, maybe that's us. Maybe that's evidence that we're too worried about kind of where that landing is, because 4 isn't that many. But you just don't
you dare put a weeb, because I've been pretty okay with the process so far.
Well, yeah, but you literally said you wanted them to shoot more threes.
I didn't say I was worried about the team's 3-point frequency.
Oh my god, you're annoying.
Very, very different.
You're
thing, man.
so
very, very
annoying. Who do you think? Do you not think their threes count towards the team's 3-point total?
They do, but I'm fine with the team's overall shot dive. I actually think.
I hope you have a nice time on your high horse over there.
Oh man,
looking down at us plebs who count players' 3-point shots towards their team's total. Really wild stuff.
Here, but other than that, it is beautiful. The view is spectacular.
Just really unconventional stuff from me to count Darius and Colin's 3-point attempts towards the team's total. I'll tell you what. I'm sorry I went so abstract on this one. Where else can we go with this podcast?
I was just going to say, I really do feel, and part of the reason why I'm so optimistic right now is I feel like team's process has been better than the results. Do you think that's a fair statement, Carter?
Totally, man. I mean, I think that's really the whole, it's like, I almost would say the results have been better than their output, like they're not playing that well, in my opinion, and they're still offensively, of course. And it's still working, and that's what's so exciting right now is you just see so many ways for this team to get better. It's not like that early run last year, which I can't, the angsty part of my brain's never going to stop worrying about how good they looked at the beginning of last year. But you think about, they were number 1 in the league in deflections by a country mile. And they were number 1 in defense for the first 2 weeks. And it was And it was
the level of competition was not as good at all.
Absolutely.
You weren't getting these quality wins.
So in hindsight, you look at that and you go, okay, the Cavs are like 15th in offense and 15th in defense, or whatever it is right now. I haven't checked after last night's game. But it's okay, this seems much more sustainable and actually could get better in the right context.
Yeah, it really does. And I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit, man, to integrate all these new pieces. And you know what? The players too, because we talked about it before the season, that these guys coming in early to camp and working out together and getting a training camp before the training camp was going to help the chemistry. And I think you see how the ball actually has momentum. There's juice there in the offense. Even though Darius and Colin aren't hitting all their shots, I think they're playing better basketball. Both of them are playing pretty good defense, by their standards, very good. But it's getting passable. And I thought the game against Charlotte,
I mean, by Laurie's standards, very good defense.
Well, yeah, Laurie too. Yeah, he's bought in, right? Like, and
I'm telling you, those three should not be able to get stops with Superman and the Hulk at the 4 and the 5. Like,
it's unbelievable.
And the fact that and it really just goes to show, and you mentioned this in our old Fear the Sword group chat, where it's like, you almost forget, guard defense is not an individual effort. It's just not. It is about your second and third lines and your second and third rotations, and that's why the Cavs are getting away with this, because they're so stout on the interior that when players are getting to the rim, they're hitting a wall, and between Laurie and Evan, you got 7-footers that are closing out on you.
And I think knowing that you have that interior defense behind you empowers the guards to be a little more aggressive offensively, like really get up there. And they're doing a better job navigating screens. I think Sexton's playing better off-ball defense. Yes, they still do die on screens, and they will lose guys occasionally. But, Darius, like, he really, I thought Charlotte was one of the best defensive games he's played. It really, really stood out to me. And he had that contest on Rozier, that three-pointer late in the game where he basically forced an air ball almost, just grazing the front of the rim. Sexton got a big steal at a massive moment in transition that helped the Cavs hang on. I'm just really, really encouraged what I'm seeing from those guards. And I have no concerns. Just like Garland has adjusted to playing with Ricky Rubio and finding ways to be more aggressive offensively. These guys are talented. They work really hard. We know they can shoot. Like, there's enough of a resume there that I'm not worried about the 3-point shots coming around.
And I think that's really important to note. Who's actually shooting the shots? Because, last year, there was the odd JaVale and Andre Drummond 3-point attempt.
Yep.
The Cavs 3-point attempt leaders in order: Laurie at 6.3 a game, Darius at 6 a game, Ricky at 5 a game. That's the one spot, but he's actually the one that's shooting okay. He's at 36%. Jetty at 4.4 a game, Colin at 4.1 a game, Kevin at 3.4 a game. Yeah. Everyone who is getting any volume is at least fine at 3-point shooting, with Jetty and Ricky being the only exceptions, and those are the ones who are doing the best.
Yeah, and Jetty, like, let's be clear, like, the bulk of his career prior to last season, like, he was pretty, like, you felt good enough about him shooting 3-pointers. I believe it was like 37% the previous year. He's playing better within his role, and something that dawned on me last night, just talking on Twitter, was we saw it with a lot of international players last year, because a lot of the quarantine rules and whatnot with COVID were different overseas. The international players came in out of shape. They weren't able to practice. They weren't running games at the YMCA like a lot of the players in the States were. And they really struggled early in that season.
Justin, come on.
Well, whatever. But they weren't in the same level of shape. And Jetty Osman coming in, losing his starting job, trying to adjust to that new role. He didn't really have the reps and the opportunity
playing point guard most of the year.
He didn't really have the opportunity to play his way into shape. Obviously, he did not respond well to that situation.
I don't want to.
His decision making was bad, like in shape or not, in rhythm or not. Like, the decision making was poor. But what he's doing this season, he's shooting a little better than you would expect. That's probably going to come down
a lot better. He could drop 10%, and it would be like okay,
right. Right. But the regression is going to come there, but he's taking better shots. He looks more like the player he had been the previous season. And I think it's fair to say, like, last season might be a little bit of an outlier. And he certainly deserves a lot of credit, as well as remaining in the rotation. Like, that shot making is really, really important. And you even see him kind of contribute some of that playmaking that he is capable of doing when he's playing within himself.
Yeah, one of very few Cavs who, like, outside of the guards that can really run a pick and roll.
Right. That's super
Okoro hasn't consistently demonstrated that yet. Definitely Lamar hasn't. Definitely Dylan really hasn't done that. So, being able to run a secondary pick and roll is not the worst thing in the world, even if it's not, the results aren't always amazing. And ultimately, like, and we said this was possible during our off-season previews. Like, neither of us were, I would say, counting on it, but like, we kind of kept surfacing this. Like, everyone's like, like especially if he was healthy, we were like, Dylan's going to win the backup wing job, and it's going to be a no brainer. And in either way, the Cavs are not in a good space with who they have on the wing. And we kind of said a few times, like, what if Jetty is not what we thought what he was last year? Because there was more track record saying that he was okay at worst before last year, where he was like, I mean, I think last year he was barely an NBA player level quality. Yeah. I mean, it was those numbers he slashed are no joke. They were really, really bad. But it does look like an outlier right now. And that goes a really long way.
His defense still isn't good, but again, it benefits from the fact that he has such good defense in the interior, right? Like, I think you're able to make some of those concessions when you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley helping you if you do get blown by. Like, Jetty is, at the very least, a big wing, right? Like, he's got reach. He's going to be able to contest.
6'11" per the last podcast you had with me. I was so thrown by that.
The man is an inch shorter than Kevin Love, okay? He is still a big wing.
He's definitely shorter than Kevin Love.
I said an inch shorter.
Okay.
K-Love's 6'8".
Yeah, he's not a small wing, but you said he was 6'9". I'm like, no, he's not.
He's close enough.
Like Justin, we can't just height watch our way through the entire roster. We got to pick our spots, brother.
You may have a point there.
Yeah,
but speaking of Kevin Love, we should probably
we do need to get to him. And I was going to talk about the fact that he's going to miss at least a week or so due to health and safety protocols. And Dean Wade was the one who got the call last night. Lamar, Dean Wade, and Jetty were kind of the extras off the bench. Though extra is pretty charitable. They ran an 8-man rotation and played a lot of their starters damn near 40 minutes. What did you think of the decision? I mean, obviously, well, first off, it stinks that Kevin's gone, and it's nice to be able to say that. His ability as a connector and just as a smart offensive player is hard to overstate, though I will forever stand for Dean Wade's perimeter defense. I think he's a really smart defender. And
I don't think he's played good defense in the stints that he's been playing this season. I don't think he's played
bad defense, but I think he's better than he should be. That would be the way I would. With that. And works hard.
I just don't think he's been at his own standard so far. So I'm actually it does suck to lose Kevin Love. I believe he's third in team on off for plus minus for this season.
Well, as David Zavak noted, him, Rubio, and Evan is the holy trinity right now.
Yeah. They've been really good together, and
I think
we talked about
rating.
the emotional baggage last time, and maybe people are going to have an increased appreciation for what Kevin Love is bringing to the table this season with him out of the lineup. I mean, God, I feel for him, because this is bad luck. Like, once again, you have something come along that takes him out of the lineup. He's playing well, the team's competitive, but this is also an opportunity for other guys, and I think Dean Wade is obviously going to get a lot of looks here, and we can see how he does with a little more comfort, being worked into the rotation here. So
can I just say, JB, my friend, I know you're a huge diehard listener to the pod, and we kind of inspire at least 90% of your tactical decision making.
He listens to it as he brushes his teeth.
And that is certified fact. Please expand the rotation to 9 guys. These guys' legs are so tired. Evan Mobley is not used to playing. Just remember that in Evan Mobley's whole life up until now, 40 minutes was playing a whole game.
I mean,
and he's playing 40 minutes against Charlotte. I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. There's diminishing returns at a certain point with this 8-man rotation where they are just giving up on plays because they're so gassed. I mean, we're seeing it. So I just feel like, especially since Windler has shown good minutes, and I know Lamar has had a hard time. So maybe I get you don't trust him right now. Okay, you still got Windler, you still got Jetty, you still got Wade, and while those aren't people that you're going to write home about, 10 minutes of Windler that takes 4 minutes off of Rubio, 3 minutes off of Garland, that stuff matters over the course of a 48-minute game. Especially when the other team that has more depth is able to just come at you in avalanches all night.
Yeah,
I just think it's worth it. And you know what? If if it's getting down to the end of the fourth and you're still in it and you don't really want to trust Dylan Windler out there or whoever it might be, okay, sure. But like, I just think going in with the 8-man rotation right now, it's just a hard sell for me. And I understand why he's doing it, but like, I just don't think it's going to sustain, especially since, again, they don't have any time off, Justin. They're playing every other game or back-to-backs like in perpetuity. Like, it's insane.
It is a little brutal, and I completely agree. Like, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement of Dylan Windler at the moment that he didn't play in that game, right? Like, because you are down Kevin Love, you're down Isaac Okoro. You would think that's going to create opportunities. Who knows? Maybe it's just a matter of let's get back to Cleveland. We're going to have a shoot around, maybe some time to work on stuff, and we can get you into the rotation. But when we're talking about all these things that are sustainable or maybe unsustainable when it comes to the Cavs' bad shooting, the one thing that does feel unsustainable is being able to play this effectively to really make an impact defensively and give the effort that the Cavs have given this season if they stick with an 8-man rotation. Like, you would imagine that fatigue is going to kick in. Hopefully Isaac Okoro comes back sooner rather than later. He will be out against the Portland Trailblazers, which that's another kind of tough blow. I'm happy we're missing Okoro, but let's get some opportunities for Dylan Windler. Let's get some opportunities for Dean Wade. Maybe Lamar Stevens can work his way back into the rotation, earn some confidence in practice or whatnot. But just given the play to this point, I'm not exactly rushing to get him back onto the court. But yeah, like I completely agree. I think you need to go a little bit deeper in this rotation and give guys opportunities to earn minutes.
And I'll say this, if you gotta stick with 8, you got to play the bench guys more. You can't do 14 minutes for Dean Wade.
Yeah.
You got to play everyone. I believe if you just do straight up, I think it's 240 minutes a game. Is that how many there are? I believe that's the case. If you split it, 30 minutes a pop, that's, the closest to ideal, with, robbing a few minutes here and there to, bump your starters up a little bit. But like, you got to come close to that if you're going to try to do this. Yeah, because especially I feel like Evan. Maybe it's just because he's a rook. Maybe I'm just getting more perceptive. I can tell when that dude is tired better than any player I've watched in a long time.
Yeah,
maybe he just shows it a lot more. But like when I see Evan with no legs, and the difference between Evan with legs, it's like, oh man, get this guy a break. Get this guy a blow.
Jared Allen might be up there too. Like when he got that elbow from Plumlee, I don't know if he got hit in the plums or if it was in the abdomen.
So dumb.
But he was not moving around well after that, and like it took him a little bit. But hey, you know what? Take from the last podcast that aged well. This Cavs are at their best offensively when Jared Allen is engaged offensively, when he's involved in the offense. And that doesn't necessarily mean scoring 20 points a game or anything like that. But when they are at least looking for him, when they're running plays with him, he's got gravity, man. Like he generates opportunities for other guys, because when you have passers like Ricky Rubio and Darius Garland running with such a weapon in the pick and roll in Jared Allen, that really generates opportunities. And the big to big passing that you talked about earlier, that comes from those opportunities, right? Like keep the defenses honest, keep Jared Allen involved, because when he at least gets his touches, I think the effort's a little more consistent on the boards as well as defensively. And once again, like it's really easy to overlook Jared Allen as a young player on this team just because he is so polished, but he's 23 years old, man. Like there is a lot of potential left in this guy, and I could not be more thrilled with the start of the season that we've had from Jared Allen.
It's been really, really fun. He and Evan just have a great synergy on the defensive end of the ball, and I think they kind of relish that, like that. Like you run into one, then oh crap, the other one's there, and
dude, the potential of those two, like the fact that they look this good
at
2 weeks into playing together, 2 weeks into playing together at this age, like I do not have big worries about them on either end of the floor. Like that seems to be a pairing that works. And it's really, really encouraging. Like what was the number one thing we said going into last season? That by this time this year, we wanted to know what the Cavs identity was. We said it would be hard to not have some judgments for Kobe Altman if we went into this season and we didn't know what the identity is. This team has an identity. We know what they're actually striving towards, like the bones of something that feels sustainable, that feels exciting. When you look at the ceiling of this group, it exists, right? Like we're still going to go through growing pains, but now it feels like, okay, we're building for something bigger than this year. We have a franchise player in place. We have these cornerstone pieces. We have these great building blocks. And when you have those building blocks in place, it makes it easier for role players to play well within a role. Jetty Osman is a great example of that. I just feel like this team is in such a healthy place right now, and man, it is really, really exciting.
It is, man. It just feels good. And you know, they don't just feel good, Justin. They look good. You see those city uniforms? I really like them, man.
I really like them as well. I'm not.
That's one of my
fan.
That's one of my favorite looks. You know, like I love that color scheme.
Oh, I love the colors. I'm not the biggest fan of the massive logo on the front, but for like an anniversary jersey, kind of, you know, honoring the history of the franchise and whatnot, it's kind of cool. And it's another one of those things where it looks a lot better on players. Looks amazing on Jared Allen. Like the retro look with the afro is just absolutely phenomenal.
A Cavs look that has a 100% success rate for me is the if you look right on the sleeves of those jerseys, the kind of the alternating colors, the kind of the pin, almost like the pinwheel colors. I don't know the right word for it, but like I really love every jersey they've ever done that has that look. And look at that basket V on the shorts.
Woo, buddy! If there was a basket V across the chest instead of the larger logo, like that might be one of my favorite jerseys ever.
So fun fact: every time for a long time with the Cavs and NBA 2K, I would go and change their court and their logo to that logo. I actually really like that
cool.
logo.
That's pretty cool.
I was very happy to see that, just to say the least. And I'm really excited. And the court, man, geez, did you see how nice that court looks?
The court is gorgeous. Like, oh my God, that's really, really cool.
It just looks so crispy. I'm really excited to see it.
I'm going to be playing with that a lot in 2K. I will absolutely be playing with that a lot in 2K because I love that last year when you would change the jersey and you'd get the court change as well. Oh yeah,
look at this thing. It is so pretty. I love the little 3-1 knot at the bottom. Very gentle, not overwhelming at all. It's crispy. I like this. I like the way the colors kind of pop. It just feels very vintage to me.
Totally agree, man. Well, you know, this feels like a great place to wrap it up. One last thought that I almost got to, and then we changed topics. Remember when the criticism coming into last year was that JB Bickerstaff doesn't play rookies? He just doesn't like playing young guys.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the next criticism that goes away is that he doesn't play as deep. He plays too short of a rotation. JB, keep proving us wrong.
We also got, you know, doesn't know how to run an offense or whatnot, and we said, hey, wait for personnel. Like let's see how this evolves.
Fourth in the NBA and assist rate right now.
Wait for a season where they actually get to practice, where they get to work on some stuff together. And you know what? The early returns are really good. And this is why we never speak with much confidence when it comes to coaching, because we don't really like, I think coaching is a really easy thing that people will go to avoid pointing out what the players they care about need to improve on, or even just the realities of the roster. And the realities of last year's roster was it needed an infusion of talent. We got that infusion of talent, and you are seeing a more modern offense. You are seeing all the things that we wanted to see, and we see young players playing. It's just funny how those narratives will pop up and stick. It's every coach in the NBA gets reduced to a caricature, and it's always amusing to me.
Yeah, it is, and I'm hoping that you know, it does feel like JB is someone who is learning and consistently growing and changing his kind of ideas of what the game is. That's what you hope everyone does, you know. And I'm still very, very happy with him. I think players are super bought in with this guy.
The buy-in is the number one thing that stands out, right?
And I think they had it last year too.
Kid.
You know, even when things were pretty terrible, I thought they still were playing pretty hard. They just didn't have the horses to keep up with NBA teams on a night-to-night basis, and now they do. And you know, I kind of get maybe that's a good reason why JB is like, bro, I'm not playing more than 8 guys because I'm used to playing people who couldn't hang, and it was painful. But that's going to be the kind of the interesting balance this coaching staff's going to have as they kind of balance short-term success with long-term development. Obviously we want to see guys like Windler get their shot. And we'll see if that ends up being the case. I think, that like we've seen kind of the upsides and the downsides to that strat, and it's going to be fun watching this team continue to navigate this early season stretch. And it's just fun getting to be stressed out watching this team.
Oh man.
It's so nice
so
being
much fun this
stressed
season.
again.
I'm having so much fun this season.
The fact that
hopefully we can ruin Larry Nance's return to Cleveland with the Portland Trailblazers tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, just think about the fact that how many games by the mid-first quarter last year you could turn them off. There hasn't been a single one this year, and every other game has made it at least the mid-fourth before it got out of hand.
Yeah.
Except Phoenix. So that's all you can ask for. I mean, this has been a dream start as far as I'm concerned for this team, and you just hope
it's a well-prepared team that's bought in.
You just hope the shots start. You just hope the shots start falling, and then everything else just falls into place. And they're gonna have to stay sharp even when that stuff does start trending back, and they can't backslide anywhere else. But if they don't, it'll be really exciting.
Another thing I forgot, and I know we want to wrap this thing up, but I forgot to talk about Paul George's comments that the Wilson ball, the changing of the game ball, has really had an impact on league shooting. And just before we came on the podcast, Shams tweeted out that the NBA teams and players are working together to look at what adjustments are necessary for the game ball. So when you talk about this shooting, it is not a Cavs-specific phenomenon. This is league-wide, and it seems to be that the change to the game ball impacted shooting. So who knows? Maybe the Cavs' shooting woes will be addressed by the league in fixing this game ball.
Here's hoping, baby.
One of the weirdest things. I had not even thought about the change of the ball at all. I was just thinking the defense, but who knows? I think that either way, there is some regression, positive regression coming for the Cavs. And you know what? Even if they don't change the game ball, maybe Jetty Osman can give them some tips on how to shoot with this ball. Seems to be doing him a lot of good.
He's like, don't change the ball, guys. For the love of God, do not change the ball.
Oh man, maybe Wilson balls were made in Turkey. I don't know. Anyways, I'm excited for the Cavs. Hopefully they can come out to a strong start here and get a win against Portland. I want everyone watching on YouTube, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a little bit. I always appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe and click the little notification bell so that you know that when we are going live. If you're listening via podcast, make sure to leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Downs exclusive Discord chat, you can send a screenshot of a review on any platform to chasedownpod@gmail.com. We would be more than happy to send you an invite. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. And until next time, go Cavs.